Despite the Toronto Raptors' failed attempt to land Kevin Durant through a trade in the offseason, reports are now emerging that Durant held the Raptors in a very positive light all throughout the negotiation. So in today's video, we're going to be going down why Kevin Durant saw the Raptors as such a great landing spot, and if this means the Raptors can actually bring the player into their team in the future. Let's get into it. What's going on, NBA and Raptors fans? It's Jacob here back with Amateur Sports for another Toronto Raptors YouTube video. On this channel, I bring you the greatest coverage and analysis on the latest Toronto Raptors news and videos and content just like this. So if you like what you see from today's video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You can help us on a road to 13,000 subs, and in return, you're getting all these great Raptors videos, plus a watch party for every single Raptors game. If you enjoyed the video along the way, drop a like to show the extra bit of support, help us grow the video and grow the channel. But our video in question today is about Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant obviously has remained with the Brooklyn Nets after a offseason of absolute turmoil for that organization. Question marks about Kevin Durant staying, question marks about Kyrie Irving staying. And for Kevin Durant, it was very clear that he was not a fan of the way the organization was heading. He was not a fan of the GM. He was not a fan of head coach Steve Nash, who actually got ejected rather hilariously from yesterday's game that the Brooklyn Nets played. But he ultimately ended up staying with Brooklyn because other teams in the NBA recognized that the Nets didn't have a lot of leverage in their trade negotiations because Kevin Durant had vocally said he wanted to leave. So why were teams going to trade everything to actually get a trade to happen when it was clear like the player didn't want to be there? So the assumption from other teams was, well, you either have to trade him or you got to live with the consequences of having a player on your team who doesn't really want to be there. The Brooklyn Nets probably made the correct decision in deciding to just keep him, and they communicated their side of the story to Durant, and they said, we understand that you want to leave, but we're not getting the value that we want for you. And Kevin Durant at Media Day had a good answer to questions about this. He said, I know what kind of a player I am. If they're not going to get that valuation, I understand that they can't trade me, and I'm going to remain here. And so far this season, Kevin Durant has been playing rather out of his mind. He is on course for another fantastic season despite being 34 years old, though the Brooklyn Nets have not started the season well. They are 1-3 on the season, though 4 games into the season, your record does not define you. It's just not a great start for a team that had all those problems in the offseason. And a lot of the discussion surrounding a trade for Kevin Durant included the Toronto Raptors, who were a big player in discussion, and myself on numerous occasions communicated them being the best landing spot for Kevin Durant based on the assets that we have available as the Raptors in order to make that trade happen and to actually go and win a damn championship by bringing the player in, because that is obviously exactly what you want to do. If you're going to get Kevin Durant at 34 years old, you want to go and win a championship immediately. I saw the Raptors, a player who can move for Kevin Durant without having to trade Scottie Barnes or Pascal Siakam. You trade other assets. The Raptors have all of their draft capital available to trade. You bring in Kevin Durant. You pair him with Siakam, Scottie Barnes, Fred VanVleet. That is a championship-worthy team, and understandably, it was a low ball offer, but my thought process was, look, if the Brooklyn Nets are desperate to trade him, this is the best offer they were going to get. The Brooklyn Nets understood that was the best offer and decided that they would live with the consequences of keeping Kevin Durant. And though the Raptors were a good landing spot, and the team I just described there with, Fred VanVleet, Kevin Durant, Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam, likely Precious Achiuwa rounding off the starting 5, that is, make no mistake about it, that is a championship caliber starting 5, one that could go win a championship this season. And understandably, things didn't materialize, but lots of the dialogue in the summer when the Raptors were emerging as such a good landing spot for Kevin Durant, much of the dialogue, especially surrounding American media, was that it was a horrible landing spot for Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant would never want to go play in Canada, play in Toronto. And, this sparked actually the most popular, most viewed video on this channel, where we talked about American media and their complete distaste for Toronto. And it had nothing to do with basketball. All of the criticism around the Raptors and Toronto basketball, it wasn't about the basketball. It was just the fact they didn't like Canada. They didn't want a player of Kevin Durant's quality playing in Canada. It was never about basketball. They made that, they made it clear. They didn't outright say it, but they made it pretty abundantly clear.
Great city, but Twan, it's not America. And you feel it when you're there. I'm telling you, especially as an African American, it's a different situation than African Americans are used to being in.
That was, of course, a ridiculous take, and he got slandered for saying such a thing on national television, but all of the discourse essentially from American media was that there's no way Kevin Durant would want to go play with the Toronto Raptors. But reports have now emerged, all these months, weeks later. Reports have emerged from one of the top two sources in basketball, in Shams Charania, who has said that Kevin Durant actually regarded the Raptors in a very positive light in the offseason. So all of a sudden, all of the noise that Kevin Durant wouldn't want to play here, Kevin Durant would not accepting here, we have one of the most viable sources in the world in sports saying that Kevin Durant saw the Raptors as a positive landing spot. And it's very clear to see why Kevin Durant thought that. It's very clear for everybody in this community. If you're watching this video, it's very clear for you to see. Like I said, the Raptors had the ability to put a good team around them. There's such a filled out roster that they can trade away good players, but still have good players remaining. Unlike teams like the Phoenix Suns, where the only way they were going to get Kevin Durant was by trading Devin Booker or somebody along those lines, or, DeAndre Ayton was somebody that they could have traded initially, but then, well, they got into all those contract issues with DeAndre Ayton and things couldn't materialize. The Boston Celtics would have had to offer up Jaylen Brown. The Raptors, well, they would have had to have offered up Scottie Barnes in order to get this trade done, but the best offer Brooklyn were going to get would have been a package around OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., and a boatload of picks. Nobody in the NBA had the opportunity to best that offer unless the Celtics were actually willing to put Jaylen Brown on the table. But Kevin Durant is a smart player. He knows what it takes to win. He's done it twice. I mean, you can do it pretty easily if you just go to a team that won 73 games the year before without you, but Kevin Durant understandably knows what it takes to win a championship, at least to a certain degree. He's had a lot of hardships, but regardless, the Raptors were in a position to go and win a championship with Kevin Durant here. They would have had the assets around him in order to go and possibly contend for an NBA championship, and recognizing this is a fantastic organization as far as basketball is concerned. In fact, many people in the NBA have voted the Raptors to be a top 2 best managed team in the league. They hold on to their assets and they position themselves well to go and strike and get that best player, bring it into their team, and all of a sudden they can go win a championship. That is what we are trying to do again here. We are putting the pieces in place, just a really good foundation, a really good core, and with all the draft capital available, Masai Ujiri is waiting for the right moment to strike and make that big trade that puts the Raptors over the top. In the offseason, that big trade potentially could have been Kevin Durant, but again, that didn't quite materialize because the Raptors did not want to break the bank for a 34-year-old who also has a history of injury troubles, that you didn't want to risk everything that. You didn't want to risk the Rookie of the Year, Scottie Barnes, but you were willing to risk some other assets in order to bring that player in. Ultimately, again, it didn't happen, but I think a big point that we can take away from this is that the Raptors, they're a proper NBA organization here, and they're regarded as a very good organization to be a part of. There is no more of this stigma. Players don't want to play in Canada. All of that is manufactured BS from the American media that just doesn't want to see a team from Canada succeed. So now we need to go into the final point here. Kevin Durant sees the Raptors as a pretty good landing spot. Now, obviously, after 4 games, this does not really mean anything. The Brooklyn Nets are 1-3. In fact, their only win came against the Toronto Raptors after a great game by Kevin Durant, among other players like Kyrie Irving. But regardless, all that, if things go very sour for the Brooklyn Nets here, they don't put together a good season despite all the talent available on their roster. And Kevin Durant, again, wants to push for a trade away from this organization. And maybe at that point, Brooklyn will have no choice but to accept the best offer that is coming their way. And maybe the Raptors still have the best offer at that point. Is this a possibility for the Raptors to still and go and get Kevin Durant? Well, let's assess all of the possibilities here. Possibilities are that the Brooklyn Nets turn into a great team and he doesn't want to leave. Possibility is the Brooklyn Nets kind of tread water. They were a lower playoff seed, not living up to their expectations. Maybe he does want to trade. The Raptors could consider positioning himself for that. And maybe the Brooklyn Nets just completely blow up and he demands a trade in the middle of the season. There are a variety of possibilities, even beyond the ones that I've just laid out here. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to is the Raptors' decision-making about Kevin Durant and his age. If he's clearly still looking like an MVP caliber player, maybe that is worth bringing into your team for a 2-year period where you can go and try and really win an NBA championship with this great core that you have in place. The only thing that would stop me, again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the offseason. My stance on this has not changed. If you can get Kevin Durant without trading Scottie Barnes, without trading Pascal Siakam, then you go and do that. The reality is, if you put Kevin Durant with those two players, you are going to put yourself in a very good position to succeed. And I would really also like to keep a hold of Fred VanVleet in those discussions, because you want him to be the leading point guard for your team, the floor general that those players would require. If they ask for anything more than that, they ask for one of the players that I've laid out there, then you just have to wipe your hands and say, this is just not going to happen. Because again, going back to what I said a few videos ago, the Raptors have all these great assets in place and all of their draft capital in place. They don't need to rush into making any trade. This is a very young core. We have some very good players and already very competitive team here. It's not a contender, and I recognize that, but we are putting ourselves in the position necessary for that when that contender or that contending piece becomes available, we can go strike and make that. Maybe Masai Ujiri might identify Kevin Durant as that guy at some point through the season or over the next couple of years. If it happens in a couple of years, he's 36, then obviously his value is a lot less. Maybe he's not the same player, and the discussions around him are going to be completely different. But as far as, if he were to request a trade this season, I find that pretty unlikely to happen. I think he's going to stay put all throughout the season. But, if something were to happen, my stance on a trade for him would be the exact same as it was before. Keep Scottie, keep Siakam, probably keep Fred. See what you can do with every other piece there. If they say no, then I'm still happy to maintain what we have here and be patient. The story is completely the same, but hey, Kevin Durant recognizes this is a great organization to be a part of. When is the rest of the media going to understand that? If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to drop a like. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. And make sure you are subscribed to Amateur Sport for the greatest coverage analysis on the latest Toronto Raptors news. Tomorrow, I'm going live on this channel 30 minutes before the scheduled start time for the Raptors game for another watch party. We've had a lot of fun at those. Hope to see you there. Or if not, I'll see you again next time for another video.